Hey, welcome to this lesson on doing 10 great chord forms that are used a lot in blues. Now, if you need, go ahead and download the PDF that goes along with this. I put the link in the description down below, and I'm going to go through 10, probably a little bit more, of the typical chord forms that are used in blues guitar playing. You know, there's kind of a standard repertoire of blues shapes that are used on guitar, so we're going to go through those. And there's just not that many that are used a lot in blues to get that typical blues sound. So the chords that are represented on these pages in the download are about what you're going to hear in, thousands of blues songs. So I wanted to just go through. These are my go-to chords for blues playing. And so let's get into it. Go ahead and make sure you've downloaded that. If you have your guitar with you, that's always great. Take a look at the first batch there. Let's see what we got here. Now, I listed these out, and I put the diamond to indicate the root of the chord. A lot of these are movable roots that you can move around. So the first one we come across is the old C7th. Let me take off my delay there, my distortion. All right, so here's a regular C7. This is a great blues chord. Most all of these blues forms are going to have that dominant seventh in some way represented. So this one, the root is on that C right there. So if I wanted to move that around, I'm just doing the inside 4 strings. I'm not playing the outside 6 string or the outside E string. So I have this C, so if I wanted this to be an E, I would have to move this up here to E. And then I have this form in E. A great sounding blues chord. It's very stable. It'll work great. That form will work great over the 1 chord, over the 4 chord, over the 5 chord. It'll work great over them all. Now remember, a blues progression is going to cover really just those 3 chords, a standard blues progression. There's lots of variation, but that's a good standard form to go through. Use these blues chords on the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. Okay, so that's a typical one. Now, I could also use just the 3-note version of that. And when I do the 3-note version of that, I typically go 2, 1, and 3. And this is a great form for when you're doing kind of rhythm playing. It's a very kind of punchy sort of form, and it works great for rhythm. For rhythm playing in blues, you don't want to play big blocky chords. It gets a little too thick. So you want to keep these little punchy little chords, and that's a great form to use when you're doing rhythm playing behind someone doing a solo. Now the next one is a C9th. Now let's talk about that. In blues, I can often substitute the 9th in for the 7th. So instead of playing this C7, there's the C. The 9th would be the D. The 9th form would be 1, 3, 5, flatted 7, and then 9. So there's the 9th. When you do a color tone like a 9th, it sounds better if you play it up in the register rather than playing it lower in the voicing. If I have it up in the voicing, that tends to work a little bit better. So here's the C7. Hear how that sounds? Here's the 3-note version. If I added that D, it creates a little bit of a color with it. All right, so that's a C9th. Now, another chord that's kind of a derivative off that is a C7 sharp 9. So here's the 9th, remember? There's the sharp 9. Now, this chord is not as stable as the others. It's kind of, it's so bluesy that you really have to kind of pay attention to your ear when you play it. It works best on the 5 chord if you're coming around a progression and you want to use it for a 5 chord. So let's say if I was in the key of maybe E, there's the 4, there's the 1. If I was doing it at the end, the 5. Do you hear how that? It's just so dissonant that sometimes you got to use it sparingly. If I tried to use it over the 1, it'll work a little bit. There's some great Stevie Ray Vaughan songs that use that chord over the in the 1 formation, but mostly it tends to work a little bit better as the 5 chord. Okay? All right, so we've gone through these 4 of them that start with a 5th string root. Here's one more. Now this one, it doesn't have a root on the 5th string, but it does use the inside voicing like the rest of these do. So this is a C13th. Now, when voiced real low like that, there's the C. So actually, the root is the highest note in the voicing in this particular one. Now, since this is voiced so low, it gets a little muddy. But as I move it up the neck, so it sounds great there. So when you get it a little bit higher up on the neck, it sounds a little bit better, that chord, since the voicings are so tight in there together. Okay, so those are some options there for the 5th string root. Now, I put top 10 chords. I actually got a little excited, so you get a few bonus chords in there as well. So let's talk about these other options. All right, so this other option here is just a regular old C7 bar form. You'll use that a lot in blues. Now this is a bar form, so this is movable. Actually, all of these forms, if you don't include any open strings, they're going to be movable forms on you. So if I wanted a D7, it would be here. First finger has your root right there. All right, so we've got several great voicings. There's the C7, a 3-note version of it. There's a C9th, a good substitute for the 7th. A C sharp 9 works great over the 5 when used as the 5 chord. A little dissonant, so you got to be careful how you use it. Then you have the 13th. That 13th form generally sounds a little bit better higher up on the neck. And we've got this other one. Now, let me get to this second one here. This is page 1, the E minor 7 flat 5. But Steve, why are you including an E minor 7 flat 5 when all the other chords are in C? All right, so let's get to one of the most common chord substitutions for blues. You ready? Here we go. If I'm in C and I'm playing over C7th, and what are the notes in a C7th? A C, E, G, a B flat. If I went up to the 9th, it would be a D, C, E, G, B flat, D, E, G, B flat, D. Wait a minute. An E, G, B flat, D, that is the same notes that are in an E minor 7 flat 5. So an E minor 7 flat 5 actually is a C9th, just without the C. So how you think about that is I have the C, or wherever note you're going to start, and you go up 4 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you do the minor 7 flat 5, which is also the half diminished, okay, the same chord, just 2 different names. If you want to think of it that way, you go up 4 frets. If you want to think of it, I like to think of it as whatever chord you're on, you go to its 3rd, and you end up with throw this minor 7 flat 5, and it works great. Don't believe me? Here you go. So let's say our chord changes are C to an F7 to an E7 or to C7. Okay, so we're in C. But I'm going to throw my little E minor 7 flat 5 chord substitution. 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, what did I do? I did the E minor 7 flat 5, or some folks are seeing referring to it as a rootless version. It is a rootless C9th, if you want to think of that. And remember, C9ths could be substitute for C7ths. So there you go. So I could use that. And then what did I do for the F7 in my little C blues, the 4 chord? I threw my little F13th in there. And that worked for that. So I went back and forth between the E minor 7 flat 5, which was the C ninth substitute, and then this F13th form, and it sounded great. Great voicing for jazz. Now, I included a couple of other shapes right there that says open voicings. Now, these don't have to go with the 5th string root, it was just a place that I could put them. A great open voicing is the old E7th right here. Okay, these are using open strings as opposed to movable voicings, which do not use open strings and are movable by the root. These open voicings are not movable. So you notice they don't have a triangle there or a diamond by indicating the root. Okay, so that's an open E7. Then we have an A7th, 5-string chord. Don't hit that low A, low E there. If I wanted to go to a B, maybe I could do my 3-note version. Maybe I could do my 7 sharp 9. All right, so some options there. Now, you may be asking yourself, what about rootless voicings? What do I mean when I say rootless voicings? Well, here's the deal. It's a chord. This blew my mind when I first got aware of it. My guitar teacher, way back when I was in high school, kind of blew me away. Then he would say things like, hey, this is a C7th or a C9th. And I'm like, it can't be a C9th, there's no C. Well, if I add the C, it's every note but the C. And so a lot of times you as the guitar player can get by with not playing the root. You don't need to play the root in every chord. The bass player is playing the root. The piano player is playing the root. Everybody's playing the root. I can get by with not playing the root sometimes. And so we call these voicings rootless chord voicings. So they work over a particular chord. In this situation, an E minor 7th works over a C 9th or a C 7th, but it just doesn't have the C in it. It has everything but the C, but it doesn't have that C in it. Okay, a little bit about rootless chord voicings. Hey, take a look at the next page. This is page 2 on the PDF. All right, so we've talked about chords that use the 5th string as its root. Okay. Have some others that are based off of the 6th string. Okay, so I included some of those there. My go-to one for that, we're just going to kind of put these in F, in the key of F, just so it's convenient. Okay, is this guy. An F, then I skip this 5th string, and I have the E flat and an A there, 1, 2, and 3 on the fingers. Well, how do you not get that 5th string to sing out? Your index finger, he kind of flattens out a little bit and just mutes out that 5th string. So he's in there. He's just not sounding when it's all going. So he's in there. He's just not sounding. So the key to that, so don't do this. That gets a little weird. Okay, let that first finger roll down so it mutes out that 5th string. Okay? This is a great form for blues. So if I'm in the key of C, see how great that sounded? Going down from the B flat of that C7 to the F7 with that A as the highest note there. Now, if I go a little bit further, sometimes it might be helpful for you to do the full F7 voicing, okay? Which I have 1, 2, and now 4 because I had to switch my fingers around. And I add this first or 2nd string C to the mix as well. So, same chord, just more notes to it. F7, this guy, the big bar form. This is a great form, but realize the thicker I make my sound, the less sound there is for other folks. So if I'm playing blues, I don't necessarily want to be playing big, thick bar chords all night long. You can, and a lot of folks do, but you have to realize how much sonic space you're taking up if I'm doing like a rhythm part, a rhythm guitar part. I probably would avoid taking up so much room, and I would probably do it down to a voicing that includes not so many notes. But that's a good one to know, that bar F7. But do you see how those are all related? They're all part of the same chord. Here's another one for you. Remember that E7th we covered on the first page? It's the same chord if I just shift it down. So it's the same chord. I just put a bar here over that. Now, look at that last one. This is a F13th. Now, all of these forms work great as the 1, as the 4, or as the 5. So take a look at that F13th. This is a... You can even sometimes bar that pinky down and catch the 9th in there too. F13th, well, that adds the 6th step of the scale. The 13th is the 6th, the same, they're all the same. Now, this is a rather colorful chord substitution that I can do for a regular dominant 7th chord. So a lot of times in blues, you're just going to see the chord name and maybe a 7th. Sometimes not even the 7th, just chord name. Okay? But I, as the player, can interpret, can add these different colors to these notes and create a more colorful, rich sound. Sometimes that may be appropriate. Sometimes it may be more appropriate to be simplified. So sometimes it may be more appropriate to be triads. So it just depends on the situation. But typically with blues, we're going to want to get that flatted 7th in there to get the dominant sound. Okay. Now, if I have the F13th, that is a little extra added color. So let's say I'm doing my C blues again. F. There's that 13th. What if I did it on the 5 chord, make it a G13th? So here's a pure C7 to an F7. Okay, now I'm going to add the C9, so a little bit more colorful. F13th, C9th. Whoa, where did that last one? That is the 7 sharp 9. See how it kind of hits you? It's so minor. You have to use it sparingly. Anyway, so those are some great blues forms that are based off of the 6-string version. Now, there are some 4-string chords that are used as well. You'll notice I didn't say 4-string chords that have a root on the 4th string, because most of these do not have their root on the actual string. In fact, I don't think any of them but the last one do. So a high-sounding F7 would be this form. Notice, it's just the top half of that chord. I'm just doing the top 4 strings. Okay? So if I have this, now this functions great as a dominant 7th chord. So if I went to, maybe I'm back in my C, I'm going to do... It's a great sound. Notice how it's higher in the pitch in the register. Now works great on the 1, the 4, and the 5. Now a trick you can do with that particular voicing is to hammer on with your 2nd finger. It's a great little way to hammer on with it. Let me get tuned up here real quick. And so there's that voicing of it where you could hammer on to it. Take a look at the next one. Okay, this is an F13th. So this is the bottom half of our 13th shape that we did at the top of the page. Okay, there you go. That's a little bit better. So the F13th, you'll notice this one is another one of our rootless voicings. Rootless voicings. It functions as an F chord, as an F7th, but there's no F in it. So you kind of have to relate where the note is. So here's the F. in my mind, I kind of relate to it as the lowest note is the flatted 7th. Or you can think of it in the next shape over. Instead of having the 4th down here, you can just bar that 1st finger, and now you'll see that the diamond is now on the bottom. So you can think of the highest tone as a root. Okay? There you go. It's the F13th, again, a more colorful option. There's still an F13th, but I've just taken the 9th out of it. Okay? Now, here's our half diminished substitution again for you. All right, so here's the deal with that. Remember, I go 4 steps up from the root, 3, 4, and I do this little half diminished form. Now, the C half diminished, or the E minor 7 flat 5, was right here. This one is on the top 4 strings, and this is functioning like over an F chord. This would be like an A minor 7 flat 5, or something that would work over an F7, an F ninth, something like that. If you want to think of it, it's an F ninth without the F. It's a rootless voicing like that. Great voicing. So if I'm in the key of, let's say, I'm doing an F blues, Okay, so the 1 chord's going to be an F. The 4 chord's going to be, let's say, a B flat. The 5 chord's going to be some kind of a C. So I'm in the key of F, okay? And I'm going to use this form for the F7, the rootless voicing, okay? I went up 4 steps, or the 3rd, if you want to think of it that way. And I did this minor 7 flat 5. For the B flat 7, what could I do? Well, I kind of like that note there, so I'm going to do my rootless 13th voicing that we just came from, and that still keeps that high note as the upper note. So listen how great that sounds. 2, 1, 2, 3. Do you hear how just naturally that fits? Now, I played all of that, and it made musical sense to you, didn't it? It made musical sense, sounded great. I didn't play one root in that whole progression. Okay? There was no root anywhere in that. They were all rootless voicings, and yet your ear will decode all of that and put it into the lens of a familiar musical form, and that's why it works. That's why it works, okay? So I don't always have to have a voicing with a root in it. Sometimes some of the best voicings are these rootless voicings of it, okay? So if I could tell you one thing that's really going to kick you up a notch, learn that little chord substitution. You go 3 steps up or 4 steps up from where you're at and do a half diminished, a minor 7 flat 5, and that creates this inner voicing and is a great chord substitution, okay? Hey, a couple more. Let's move on to page 3, and I'll show how these things work. Okay, so take a look at this. This is a standard blues chord progression. Okay, this is in the key of it's the first one is not in any key. It's true in every key. You have the 1 chord. It's 12-bar blues. Blues normally comes in 12 bars, 12 measures. Okay, those measures have specific combinations of chords. It usually goes 1, then to a quick 4, and then to 2 bars of 1. That's the first 4 bars. Okay? The next 4 bars are 2 bars of 4, 2 bars of 1. The last 4 bars are a 5, a 4, and a 1. Okay, now that is the 12-bar basic blues progression. There's tons of variations on it, but that's the progression. Okay? But Steve, it looks so complicated. It's 12 measures. If you're going to want to play blues in any way, it starts your whole journey starts with that progression. Learn it. 1, 4, 2 bars of 1. And the next measure or the next line of 4 is the 4 for 2 bars, back to 1 for 2 bars. Then you have the 5, 4, and then 1. And then sometimes that last measure, if you're going to turn it back around, you'll throw a little 5 or a 5/7 in there to get us back to there. That's the 12-bar blues progression. That's what you need to know. Okay, so memorize that. Okay? Now, if I put that progression into the key of G, okay, take a look at the second progression there on page 3. So I'm going to use these lower voicings. Okay? So now we're in the key of G. Then the 4 chord would be a C. The 1 chord would be G, G, A, B, C. There's C. And then the 5 chord would be a D, D7. I can make, if it's blues, I can make them all 7s, okay? And 7s gives that bluesy sound. So I'm going to use these lower voicings. There's the G7 for the C7. I'm going to use that voicing, that 3-note voicing. Then I'm back to that. Do you hear how the voice leading, those two kind of go together, okay? So I could have done this, but you see how those two don't go together in different ranges. So I try and keep chords in the same neighborhood of each other, okay? Then when I go to the 4 chord, measure 5. Here's the last line, D7th, 4, 1. Then sometimes I can maybe even sneak in a 5 there to get me back to the top. Okay, now I have a little progression on the track here. Let's see if this works, okay? So we're just going to play this maybe once or twice through, I want you to listen how it sounds. We're going to listen to it one time, and then I'll play it one time. So we'll do it 2 times through. All right, here we go. Hit me with the track. This is G in G. I'll just play it. Oh, wait a minute. Here comes the track. Here it is. G, 4, 1, 4. Back to 1. Here comes 5. 4, 1. Okay, now I'll play along with it. Great, now you can turn it off. Okay, great. See how that works? The 1, the 4, the 5. Now I used lower voicings. Okay, so if I was playing in a kind of a trio sort of setting, that would sound great. Okay, now flip the page. Now let's say instead of the lower voicings, we're going to do that track again, and we're going to do the higher voicing. So this time I'm going to make my G7th up here. Remember that higher voicing? And then that C7, I'm going to do this rootless E minor 7 flat 5 substitution. Then back to the G7. Do you see how those two chords kind of partner together? D7, back to C7. All right, so let's get that track going one more time, and I'll play along with it. You'll hear how it sounds. All right. Now, one of the things that I'm doing, and you may have already noticed this, is I can slide around to notes, slide around to chords, okay? I slide a half step below into it, maybe a half step above into the chord. Okay, I'm just sliding around into these chords. I'm just... If I'm approaching it from above, I go down a half step. I can move around on the chords. Very bluesy thing to do. So practice that. Practice moving back and forth between chords. If I have a chord that I have to go for a long time, man, don't just sit there and go. That's boring. Okay? Start moving it back and forth. Just moving in between chords. One more quick concept on that. While we're talking about that, I want you to hear how it sounds. I'm going to approach every chord from above. Okay? So I'm going to approach every chord from above, and I'm going to go down to that chord. So it'd be like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So that worked. That sounded good. Let's approach every chord from beneath. And here it has a little bit different sound. 2, 1, 2, 3. So almost approaching it from beneath gets a little bit more of a bluesier sound. But can you hear with your ear the difference between approaching a chord from above as opposed to approaching it from beneath? All right, take a look at the next page. The next one down there. It's still on page 4, the bottom half of that. Okay, it says, this is standard blues in G, but now I'm going to use not the low voicings, not the high voicings. I'm going to use these middle voicings, okay? The ones that use the 5th string sort of a thing. So to get us started off on that G7, I'm going to do my little chord transposition, chord substitution, going up 4 steps and doing the minor 7 flat 5. Okay, so on a G, I would do a B minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5. Okay, for the C, I'm going to substitute in a C ninth, but it only says C7. Well, or it may say on your part, you may be reading a song and it says that it is a C7. I can substitute in a ninth, a 13th, whatever I wanted to, just according to my own taste and how I feel musically it might fit. Okay. So this G7, C ninth. You hear how well those fit because they share the same common tone up here at the top. And then here's the C ninth. Here's the G7. Hey, let's keep that common melody tone working. Let's do a D7. Now to a C ninth. There you go. So all 3 of these, I kept the same melody note. Okay, so that progression would sound like this: 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe a D7 sharp 9. Just another option, another way to go. I can choose how I want to play these chords, different options that I want to do. So there you go. Those are my favorite go-to blues chord shapes that I like to use. Okay, so to close us out, let's do that track in G, and I'll kind of run through some different voicings with it. All right.